matter. And with that being said, let's crack on. Billy Grimwood, Scouse Norman, David Chand versus Mickey Green and the Wembley Mob. Albert Redding, the notorious villain from Canning Town, first mentioned the name Billy Griffiths in reference to the man he thought was one of the hardest men going in the UK. He had been asked a question about who he felt the hardest guy he had come across was, dismissing the likes of Mad Frankie Fraser and others, and opted for Billy Griffiths, who he rated as the hardest man of all. It was a slight slip of the tongue, or possibly memory filtering a little, understandable after the life Redding had led, but he actually meant one Billy Grimwood from Liverpool. Grimwood was a notorious hardman from Liverpool, a man only known in local circles, some true crime enthusiasts, and the underworld, but was a respected hardman and close friends with another top-tier tough guy, originally from Liverpool, Scouse Norman Johnson. There was little information to be found on Grimwood from the mainstream or news archives, so I was pleasantly surprised when reading about a potentially deadly clash he, Scouse Norman, and another dangerous Scouser, David Chand, a notorious earbiter in fights, had with a tasty mob led by the leader of the Wembley Mob, Mickey the Pimpernel Green, who went on to be one of the biggest and most successful global criminals. The Wembley Mob were a firm from London specialising in armed robbery, who eventually were grassed up by one of their own, Bertie Smalls, but this was at a later date. The story goes that Scouse Norman, who was heavily invested in minding clubs in London, even opening a casino, and was universally respected by top faces in the smoke, including the Nashes, Crays, Albert Dimes, the list goes on, had agreed to come in with Grimwood and Chand on a business opportunity. Norman had at one point fronted the Crays with his good friend, Terry Kenny, when the firm were hunting Kenny over a fight he'd had with Reggie Cray and Wandsworth Nick. The full story to this is linked at the end of this chapter for those who have not heard it, so if you stay on at the end, there's a link there and you can just press it and it'll take you straight to that chapter, guys, if you haven't listened to it already. The business opportunity Norman had agreed to jump on was a cloth card-based gambling game from London that Billy Grimwood had moved to Liverpool. His plan was to roll out the money-spinning game to all the northwest and make a killing. Whilst Norman was away in the Costa del Sol, Mickey Green and the heavy Wembley Mob had caught wind of the London card game being rolled out in Liverpool by Grimwood. A few of them decided to pay Grimwood and Chand a visit to demand a piece of the lucrative action. The Wembley Mob that Mickey Green led were a tight mob who dressed well, ate well, had good manners, and were top-drawer armed robbers, the most respected criminal profession back in the day, a time when having the bottle to go on the pavement was revered in criminal circles. When the London crew, consisting of Bertie Smalls, Clive Butler, Joe Delaney, and Green, arrived in Liverpool, they were told that Grimwood and Chand were drinking in the Jokers Club and promptly made their way there, swaggering in as only London blaggers could, and got straight to the point. They explained to Chand and Grimwood, who they knew from their trips to London, that they had stolen their idea and couldn't use it in Liverpool without paying a £2,000 a week levy, which was big money in those days. It's maybe important to say that in the 60s and 70s, and still in the modern day, to some respected successful London criminals saw themselves a cut above their northern counterparts. Northerners may be tough, but in a lot of London villains' minds, Londoners were the number one money getters, which is the most important thing in villainy, along with their honour. The demand was met, maybe predictably, by the two Scouse Hardmen, and Green's mob were told in quick order that they would be getting nothing. Out of respect, they were happy to sort the Londoners some women and a night out on the tiles, but they would receive no cut in their business. This polite offer was met by fiery Clive Butler, punching Chand hard with a big left hook, but Chand retaliated, quickly punching Butler to the floor before taking a savage bite and half his ear off in the straw. Whilst Chand made short work of Butler, the rock-solid Grimwood, with two swift headbutts, left Green and Smalls on the deck. Delaney didn't want to know after seeing his friends flattened out. Mickey Green and his firm must have felt humiliated and furious as they trudged out of the Scouse pub, aptly named the Joker, and went back to the smoke. The likes of Mickey Green are not ones to shy away from confrontation, and although they had lost a battle on foreign soil, they kept up a campaign of terror from home turf, calling Chand and Grimwood, spelling out what was now going to happen to them, after the beating they had given Green and his pals. They were told by anonymous voices that their graves had already been dug, and it was a matter of time before they were going to go for the long sleep. On returning from sunny Spain, Scouse Norman met Billy Grimwood and Dave Chand. They filled him in on what had occurred with the heavy London mob and the subsequent death threats. Scouse Norman was not a man that messed around, and suggested rather than waiting, they would drive to London and put it on them in their own gaff. They headed straight to Delaney's club that he owned in Paddington, confronting him about the extortion attempts. Norman said to Delaney he should round up their firm and they would have a sit down to sort things out. Delaney shook all the Scousers' hands and left the club, but never returned for the meeting, and neither did Mickey Green, Smalls, or their firm. It turned out they didn't know Scouse Norman had a stake in the business, and probably felt it wasn't worth the aggravation to get into it with three lunatic Scousers when there was money to be made elsewhere. This was not the end of the visit to London for Grimwood, Chand and Norman. They were going to end up in prison, and it wasn't for the fault of Mickey Green or his chaps. After the meeting with Delaney was out of the way, and the Mickey Green mob had not been in contact, the trio went on a marathon drinking session around London. As with drinking sessions of this type, especially with three Hardmen who all have egos in their own right, trouble was always going to find them one way or another. In an attempt to sober up in the early hours, they plotted up in an all-night snooker hall in Windmill Street, drinking copious amounts of black coffee. Whilst there, Scouse Norman was offered a pistol to purchase by an old friend, which he declined. Billy Grimwood, on the other hand, was interested and playfully aimed it at Chand and pulled the trigger, not knowing it was loaded. Perhaps if they hadn't been drinking all day, he would have checked if there was a bullet in the barrel, but unfortunately he didn't, and poor Chand ended up copping a slug in his ankle. They patched it up best they could and got Chand in the car and parked him up outside Charing Cross Hospital before making a sharp exit. Their plan was to get rid of the shooter in the Thames, but Norman and Grimwood were bickering that much they missed the perfect spot and got pulled by the police. As in the game Monopoly, next stop past go, no 200 quid collected, and remanded to Brixton Prison. Except this was real life, and Grimwood and Norman had a potentially lumpy sentence to get out of. Okay, guys, that's the end of that upload. Hope you enjoyed it. I found it very interesting because there's not much out there on Grimwood. This comes from Scouse Norman's book. It's in my own words. You know, I've just took creative license to an incident that he talked about. But you can purchase a book, I think. I got hold of a copy. I think it cost me around about 50 quid. But I think it was the last one that I got. I found it on Amazon. There may be some more in stock now. I'll have a look. If there is, I'll leave a link in the description if you want to get his full book. However, because obviously Norman's passed, it's not in circulation, I'm writing it in my own words, I'm not infringing on any copyrights. I will be having a look at other anecdotes, maybe some of his time in prison. If you want to hear that, let me know in the comments if you want to hear more about Scouse Norman and his adventures and the different people. I mean, guys, this person was high level. He had a lovely home in the end in Staffordshire, which was, you know, property. He travelled the world. He knew Hollywood stars. He was good friends with all the top London villains. Very well respected, big guy. Good boxer in his own right when he was younger. You know, serious guy. And, you know, a lot of people have said to me, before they've even watched the videos that I'm doing on Scouse Norman Johnson, they're saying, oh, the Liverpool never chased Londoners out of anywhere, and there's loads of stories going around. Well, this is the stories I'm telling aren't about the craze going to Liverpool or Manchester or wherever, or Newcastle and getting turfed out. It's got nothing to do with that. Scouse Norman Johnson and a lot of serious Scousers did a lot of business in London and vice versa. So, you know, people need to actually open their ears and listen at times who are commenting before they actually watch the video. This is, just to repeat, not about those type of things. This is from Scouse Norman Johnson himself. He was a good friend with Jimmy Tippett, who's a seriously respected and hard man from South London, who run a lot of spielers and did a lot of debt collecting and stuff for the Richardsons. who he was actually, I think, minding the Mr. Smith's Club and all that kicked off back in the day. His son, Jimmy Tippett Jr., he remembers going to the Spieler and his dad Spieler and meeting Scouts, Norman Johnson, etc. as well. But, you know, anyone will tell you he was a respected, serious person. So, yeah, I find them fascinating. If you do enjoy them, let me know in the comments. And, of course, if there's any other videos that you would like me to do, also pop them in the comments and I'll always try and get around to them. As I've said on my community post, guys, if you subscribe, I'm going to be interacting more with the community posts because, you know, on the comment sections of a lot of videos, just because of the nature of the channel increasing in size and more comments, etc., to try and sieve through all the comments and answer, it just takes too long. So what I'm doing is on the community post, it tends to be less, you know, less people comment, so I can engage with my subs on there, and it's good to sort of get feedback and have a chat with you guys because, you know, ultimately it's all our channel. It's the community channel, and I just really enjoy this subject matter, and I know that a lot of you guys do as well. All right, take care.